When I look at this church and all these people here, I had to get a photograph of what God wanted me to do with my life, or I would still be in a cornfield in eastern North Carolina. Nothing wrong with a cornfield in eastern North Carolina. That's a good place to start for what God had for me. I love that. But what I'm saying is, I began to catch glimpses of what God could do if I would just believe Him. And it all begins with a picture. You got to see yourself beyond where you are. The power of a picture. Get in, go down to the enemy's camp and listen to what they are seeing and what they're saying. They're more afraid of you than you realize. You are a mighty man of valor. You've got to see yourself as a good dad. You've got to see yourself. Just because you never had one doesn't mean you can't be one. You've got to see yourself as a blessed family. My family is not cursed. My family is not just going to suffer trials and tribulations. I call down the blessing of Abraham on my family, and I see my family blessed. Give God a praise if you believe it. The children of Israel, here's the point. God let them bring those grapes back from Eshcol to get a picture in their minds of all the people who didn't see it. Oh, if I want that now. Because God works through pictures. Get a picture of yourself free from alcoholism if you're addicted to it. Get a picture of yourself free from depression. Get a picture that you're free from drugs if you're struggling with it. It all begins in a service like this where God begins to say, there's so much more that I have for you than you can imagine. Get in your mind a photograph of God's promise. See it first. Secondly, the second reason that He wanted them to go over into the promised land, this is a big one. He wanted them to taste the grapes. He wanted to give them a foretaste of what God was going to do. He wanted them to have an appetizer, a sample platter. No more leeks and garlics from Egypt for you. You're moving into a better life. You're moving into a land of dreams. You're moving into something greater than you can produce. I'm your God. I'm Jehovah Jireh. I'm Jehovah Shaddai. I am your source. I want good for you and not evil. I know the plans that I have for you. Plans of good and not evil, to give you hope, to give you a future. There's only two mentalities. You're either a grape taster or you're a giant talker. Because 10 of the spies came back, they saw the exact same thing as the two who were positive and said, we can take the land, we're well able. And notice they didn't come back and talk about their God. They came back and said, we are as grasshoppers in their sight. There are people and they have giants in the land, and we are as grasshoppers. They had a grasshopper mentality. You either have a grasshopper mentality or a grape taster mentality. And so they were talking about how big the grapes were, but here comes Joshua and Caleb. And they're talking about, one is talking about the giants are huge. The other two are coming and stand up, and I could see Joshua and Caleb say, yeah, but the grapes are huge. Oh, but the devil's so big. Oh, but our God is so big. Oh, but there's a lot of sickness and disease going around, but here's how grape tasters talk. You can tell a grasshopper by their vocabulary. We can't, it's not possible, everybody else can but me. Nothing good ever happens to me. Woe is me, woe is me. We are not called to be grasshoppers. We're called to be grape tasters. Come on. Don't give up. Don't quit. Don't lay down. And this is what I want you to see. Giants never showed up until they got to the land of promise. When God allows you to have to confront gigantic problems It's just God's signpost that you're at the beginning of your miracle. We take that as a negative. See, it's all about your perception. That's the third reason why God sent them over. He wanted to check out their perception. What was their perception of themselves? What was their perception of their enemy? What was the perception of their God? And that's the three things you're going to have to deal with if you're ever going to walk by faith and do what God has put you on this planet to do. Number one, what is your perception of yourself? They said, we are as grasshoppers. I'm nobody, I'm nothing. You know, the Lord really spoke to me this week about this, and He said, you need to work on that one. Because I have a lot of insecurities, even 61 years old. I can't hardly take a compliment. My mind races. I play the sax or something, and somebody will say, that was amazing. And my mind's thinking, boy, you must not listen to really great saxophone players. I'll play the piano and somebody will say, boy, you can really play. I always compare myself with somebody else. You preached a great sermon. I'm just now learning that, you know what? Never apologize. Never belittle what God blesses you with. It may not be as good and as great as, but I'm not a grasshopper, and what I do, nobody else can do just like me. And so I think I'll just be me and God, and we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. I need you to give God a praise. Turn to somebody and say, I'm not a grasshopper. I'm a grape taster. My goodness, young people, when you meet somebody, don't give them a little dead fish handshake. Don't even know how to shake. I mean, grab that hand like a cowboy. Grab that hand like a man. Grab that hand firm. Look them right in the eye. Not over here, not over there. Look them straight in the eye and say, I know who I am. I know who my God is. I know that the one in me is greater than he that is in the... If God be for us, who can be against us? God's not about you always... Listen, I believe in humility, but humility is not putting yourself down. Humility is lifting God up in your life and giving Him all the glory. And there's a difference between humility and just belittling yourself. Grasshopper complex. I'm nothing, I'm nobody, I'll never be. I'm just now learning in a good way, not in an arrogant way, that if God has blessed me, if I murmur about what God has blessed me with, God takes it as murmuring about Him. I want you to understand that grasshoppers see obstacles, but grape tasters see opportunities. Grasshoppers see sickness and disease, but grape tasters see healing and long life. Grasshoppers have slave mentality. Grape tasters have sonship mentality. Grasshoppers talk like victims, but grape tasters talk like victors. And you can always tell a grasshopper by how they talk. Turn to somebody and say, I already know what you are. Tell them, you're not a grasshopper, so stop talking like one. That's what I'm trying to preach here. Get a photograph from God of who you are and why you're here, and don't belittle yourself. Maybe you're not as talented as somebody else and this and that, but you know what? God uses people who say, I believe in myself, I believe in God, and I'm not going to brag on the devil. I'm going to brag on God and His ability. Quit going around lollygagging in the muddy grubs. You are talking, well, I'm old now and nobody cares about. Shut up, grasshopper. Become a grape taster and say, I'm older now. I'm going to get to enjoy all the stuff I've worked so hard. I'm going to go play golf one day. I'm going to go out. I'm going to have myself a time. I'm going to grow me a gray beard. They saw the giants and backed up from the grapes. Because when they got there, they thought that they would just step into the promised land. But anytime you get God's provision, it comes with demonic resistance and problems. There will never be a clear coast straight to the land flowing with milk and honey. You may have, but notice this. See, they were comparing themselves to the giants, not comparing their God to the giants. Because who's the giant then? God is greater and they are weaker.